know it's difficult to see, but sometimes it does take a little playing around to get it to line up properly. Don't worry about it if the bolts aren't going into the pump housing. We want to make sure that this gasket is lined up so that we don't have any problems of it leaking. There's actually 5 bolts that hold this gearbox together. 4 of them go into the body of the pump. And one smaller one faces the opposite way underneath. Now that you've got the bolts in place and started and the gasket lined up, now we start worrying about getting them lined up into the pump body itself. Just snug up the bolts that are going into the pump body. Now the one underneath is sometimes a little awkward to get at. You can't turn this pump, balance it. Make that as tight as you can. Set your pump back down. Tighten up the 4 main bolts using a cross pattern again. Okay, next thing we got to do is to tighten up the 3 brass screws on here and then install the oil. Okay, so now we're going to tighten up the brass bolts. Use the right wrench. They have a O-ring on them to seal them so they don't have to be super tight, just snug. So that's done. Now we are going to put our oil in. So we'll get the dipstick, get the 80-90 weight gear lube for here. Generally what I do is just dump it in. Most bottles have an indicator to show you how much is being used. This takes approximately 12 ounces. Just bring it down so that it appears to be that there's 12 ounces in. Take your dipstick, thread it all the way to the bottom. Pull it back out. On the dipstick, you'll see a little cutout. If the oil is at the bottom of that cutout or half, you're quite fine. So we know we have enough gear lube in here. Now the other thing we should do before we go any further in joining these two together is to actually put oil in the engine. Now the engine takes about 500 milliliter. Easiest way to do it is undo the filler cap. Get your oil. 30 weight, non-detergent. You can use a funnel, but I prefer to turn the engine up on its side a bit and slowly pour directly into the engine. This particular motor will take a quart of oil. Okay, now we have our oil in, 1 quart. Set the engine back down. do one more check with the dipstick to make sure that it is at least 3/4 of the way up the stick. Which it is. So that is enough oil. And we'll be ready to join the two halves together very shortly. Now, when we go to put the gearbox and the engine together, you can either use anti-seize, silver, copper, any type, or you can use grease. If you don't have the anti-seize, grease will work. Cover the shaft. This helps prevent it from rusting together later on if need be that you need to take it apart. Install the key so that it's sticking out a little bit. You may need to tap it into place because it is a snug fit. You can also tap it back a bit. You don't need quite that much. You just want enough out that it will line up inside the gearbox. So now we're ready to join the two pieces together. Okay. And you slide this together. Try not to slide it all the way on. You want to be able to start your bolts without getting them cross-threaded. So you actually do want to see a little bit of the thread. Now this is a tedious little job to get the 4 of them in. The 2 bottom ones aren't too bad. It's the ones that are in the upper part of the casing. You can only turn about 1/8 of a turn at a time. Okay, we'll tighten them up. You can do a cross pattern. Not really necessary on this particular part of it, because once these pull in tight, it sits down pretty good. Okay, making sure that the gearbox all snug now, tight. We're going to set it aside.